Ladies and gentlemen, some big news from the world of Marvel Future Fight. Netmarble, the parent company of Marvel Future Fight, put out an interview that they did with Marvel Future Fight's division director, Terry Lee. So one of the big guys working on MFF actually answering questions about the game, not only now, but into the future. So some really cool insights here. Terry is also featured in a video over on MFF's YouTube channel where they basically celebrate Marvel Future Fight's 10-year anniversary. It's called Congratulations. And you can see Terry in the video, you can see Damien, you can see Dakota, a bunch of people that work at Marvel, as well as Netmarble. 3RLs in the video. It's a really nice kind of grounding experience for a game that's lasted for so long, and to see some of the faces and some of the hard work that goes into the game. So we get some insights. I've read the interview already. We get some really interesting insights from this 10-year anniversary interview with division director Terry Lee. So the interview is actually pretty long, and I don't want to go through every single question and answer because it would make the video really long. So I highly recommend that you go and read it if you're interested. I'll leave a link down below in the description. But it is a mixture of honest answers from Mr. Lee and some scripted stuff to sort of advertise the game, the 10-year anniversary, the 10,000 crystals, you know, cheers to 10 years, tier 4 selector, things like that. So it is a mixture of, and it is technically an ad because this is an interview by Netmarble to one of their own employees. So there is a little bit of like a bias here, but it is still interesting. You know, they talk about that the US and South Korea are still the two largest regions that play the game. They talk about the longevity of the game, and they talk about balancing sort of autoplay and sort of casual content with more, more hardcore content, or sort of like more challenging player-driven content where you have to actually play, because that is the thing that matters for an RPG, right? The skill canceling. And sort of balancing those two things to keep the core elements of an action RPG experience while also giving casual players a way to stick around. They talk about the possibility of a remaster, which is crazy. I would love like Marvel Future Fight 2 with a modern engine. The game's already so gorgeous. So they answer a lot of interesting questions. Some of them are fluff. Some of them are, deeply rooted in the game. And sort of the fandom, but the really juicy stuff comes towards the end. Do you have any plans for a major overhaul of the game? For example, a remaster or version 2.0? That's crazy, because Marvel Future Revolution was touted as like the successor to Marvel Future Fight, and it's dead. So I think there really is potential for like Marvel Future Fight 2 with a brand new engine. And maybe if they could find a way to bring all the characters over, and then you could slowly unlock them again over time rather than starting from scratch. I genuinely think there is possibility for this, but we'll have to wait and see. At the moment they say that it's kind of too large a scale project to undertake, but they don't rule it out necessarily. But they do give us one nugget of information that we wouldn't otherwise get. One of the key updates players have been eagerly awaiting, a new Epic Quest, is also currently in the works with a target release in the second half of this year. So we're going to be getting another Epic Quest sometime in like August, September, October, November, December. Should be quite interesting. Then they talk about how mobile RPGs these days are very casual, like hyper casual focused. Think of like AFK Arena and stuff like that, where the gameplay is mostly just auto, set it and forget it, farming in the background, and the player has almost no control over what's going on, which is a pretty stark contrast to Marvel Future Fight, where there's something, not only do we have a joystick and we have a bunch of buttons, but we also have skill canceling, where you can interrupt skills for other skills. So there actually is a very, very high degree of skill gap and skill cap for Marvel Future Fight compared to even like a turn-based game where you're just pressing skills as they pop up, but and positioning your characters before the fight, but otherwise you have no input and no sort of like control. And he actually says, Terry gives a really good answer. Manual controls are a core element of the action RPG experience. I agree completely. So we intend to continue emphasizing that aspect, which is amazing. However, we're also well aware of the fatigue that can come from prolonged gameplay or repeating the same content ad nauseum. To address this, we plan to continue offering some autoplay and fast clear features, such as with clear tickets. So it doesn't seem like they're moving away from their sort of balanced approach of some of the content being autoplay or autoplay only or clear ticketable, and then some of the content you actually have to control the character in. And I think that's a really good balance. And I think a lot of games are just scared nowadays to do that, and they just go in one direction or the other completely, and a balance would be so much better and would appeal to a much wider range. So then we get into the real juicy stuff. Could you share the mid and long-term update roadmap? Are there any hints you can give about upcoming characters or uniforms? Also, are there plans to introduce high-tier growth content such as Tier 5? We recognize that the game can appear complex and challenging for new players, says Terry. So we're reviewing several improvements to enhance accessibility. As for future content, we plan to continue releasing various themed updates, which we already knew. Without giving too much away, we can tease that a highly requested theme from last year is finally on the way, so please look forward to it. And then here's the most interesting part, the reason why I had to make this video. Regarding higher tier growth content like Tier 5, while it's about 3 years since Tier 4 was introduced, because Tier 4 was introduced in April or May of 2022, many heroes are still at Tier 3 or even Tier 2. Because of this, we don't currently have any immediate plans to add Tier 5 or similar higher tier growth content. This should come as a surprise to some players, as a relief to most players, but it's really interesting to see that obviously Terry knows what he's talking about, and they recognize that the game is really not in the right place character-wise to push to Tier 5. Now, that doesn't mean that they can't add an additional layer of character development that could sort of be similar to an upgrade like a Tier 5. And I've talked about this a lot in Marvel Future Fight, where people don't see it that way, but there are a lot of upgrades, like when they added CTPs to the game and they basically jumped the power level of obelisks, when they added artifacts to the game, when they added Odin's Blessings. These jumps are sort of like mini tiers, right? Tier up from Tier 2 to Tier 3. So if you count it up that way, we could actually be a lot closer to like Tier 7 or Tier 8, depending on how you see things. Now, obviously, the character advancing, getting a brand new passive ability, getting a brand new active ability, that it feels more game-changing than slapping on an artifact or slapping on a CTP. But in some cases, the artifact is way stronger than the Tier 3 upgrade or the Tier 4 upgrade, right? Because some of them are just so game-changing. So I do still think, although his answer, I mean, obviously he works for the game, he knows what's going on, his answer does reflect what Marvel Future Fight is going to do. It doesn't mean that we couldn't still see power creep, or you know, new comic cards, new swords, some other upgrade type of thing in game that's similar to swords, similar to comic card that's like an account-wide buff for all of your characters. We could still see that next year. And although it won't have the same name as Tier 5, it may still end up feeling like Tier 5 because of the pressure that it puts on players and because of the growth that it reflects for your account. And then Mr. Lee leaves us with a pretty nice goodbye, thanking the players once again for a 10-year milestone, and then looking ahead to the 15 and 20-year anniversary milestones, which is pretty wild to think. 15 years, 20 years playing a single game. I mean, people still play Tetris and stuff like that, so, and Pong, so I guess it's possible. Now, jumping back to the most interesting part of the interview, where Terry Lee hints at a highly requested theme from last year finally being on the way, essentially that it should be coming this year. We can speculate on a lot of different themes that players have requested because there are a lot of options. But I want to offer up to you the 3 that I think are most likely in one form or another. Now, I don't know if this highly requested theme is also going to be the epic quest that Terry hinted at in an earlier question. They could be 2 completely separate updates, but considering the scope of an epic quest being that it involves so much investment, and being that these highly requested themes sometimes feature tons of different characters, there is a possibility that there is overlap because they don't want to do an epic quest for a topic or a theme that players don't want and risk wasting all that time, wasting all the animation and etc. just for something that is going to be lukewarm and have like sort of a poor reception from players. So I think the best, or at least the one that I think is the best and most likely guess, is X-Men 97. I think that this fits, and this was released in March of 2024. This fits as the most requested, the most highly requested theme from last year. And that's assuming that it's the most highly requested theme that basically had the most requests last year. Because over the years, we've definitely had requests for other content. For example, Galactus and sort of a Galactus or a Gallon themed epic quest has been posted tons of times. This is 6 years ago on the Reddit. There is just so many posts here. This is 2019, and people go to great lengths to highlight the possibility of a Galactus update in Marvel Future Fight. And we actually had the Grandmaster featured in the new team battle arena, so it wouldn't be a stretch here to see some kind of combination. But I don't think Galactus is nearly as popular for specifically from last year compared to something like X-Men 97. However, what also was released last year, but a lot later last year, is Agatha All Along. It was September, but Agatha All Along, MCU also has the possibility of showing up in-game. They did talk a lot in the interview about MCU updates and how they want to continue to do them. So I think, although it's not nearly as popular, and I don't think it would, in my opinion, I don't think it would qualify as highly requested. I don't know what data they have. Maybe the data they have, maybe they trawl social media more than we know. And on social media, on Twitter, on Facebook, etc., they're posting about Agatha All Along a lot more. And maybe since, we don't have any of these characters, we only have Wiccan, and he's quite weak in the game, whereas we have most of the X-Men featured here already in game, right? The only X-Men from this whole list here that we don't have is Morph. And Morph doesn't really have a power set. I mean, Mystique's there, but that's basically it. So what would an X-Men 97 update even look like, instead of just more uniforms, which is definitely possible. There's a bunch of characters here that could get tier 4. They don't have it yet, like Jubilee, Hank, McCoy, Beast, and Bishop. And it also gives them an opportunity to rectify their mistake from last year, where they gave Cyclops a no uniform tier 4. But I would love to hear from you guys what you think this highly requested theme from last year is. Is it going to be X-Men 97? Is it going to be Galactus? Is it going to be Agatha? Or am I completely wrong? And is it something completely different, like Defenders or Inhumans or something else entirely? Hit me up in the comments down below. Let me know what you think of this interview with Terry Lee. I think it's very interesting and very cool. Thank you so much for watching. Smash the like button if you enjoy the content. Thank you, Mr. Lee, for doing this interview. And I'll see you in the next one. Take care.